live, local and number one. Canterbury Mornings with Chris Lynch. Weekdays from 8:30 to midday on News Talk ZB 100.1 FM.
News Talk ZB, Canterbury Mornings with Chris Lynch. A New Zealander working for the Red Cross in Gaza says the chaos is worse than any other hotspot she's been to. Gail Corbett is seconded to the International Committee of the Red Cross as a health delegate in the Middle East conflict. Her job involves ensuring ambulances and hospitals are kept supplied with equipment for looking after weapon-wounded patients and negotiating safe passage for ambulance and medical staff. Gail has been in Gaza since January last year, previously Afghanistan and Iraq. She joins me now from Tel Aviv, and good morning to you.
Good morning, Chris.
Thank you so much for your time. First of all, you've spent a lot of time in Gaza, particularly over the past couple of weeks. Describe the conditions you've been working in.
We've been working in a very dynamic situation. I mean, this is the third war in 6 years in Gaza, but this one has just continued to escalate beyond what's been experienced in recent times.
You say the chaos is worse than any other hotspot you've been to. What do you mean by that?
Just the sort of acuteness of the war in Afghanistan. It's sort of happening around, and I was working in the hospitals there, and so we were seeing the mass casualties, the patients coming in, but we weren't in the thick of it ourselves. The hospital was a little bit aside, and then in Iraq it was very similar. The war is going on around, but it's not nearly. Gaza's the size of the Hutt Valley. It's a tiny area. You can't escape the shelling and the noise, the people, and then if you are out and about, sometimes the total and utter silence in the streets, and where life is just not normal.
There is simply nowhere for residents to hide when the shelling happens. It's fair to say that no matter where you are in Gaza City, you can never feel safe.
Well, this is one of the activities that ICRC and many of the other humanitarian organisations are dedicated to, is to ensuring there are safe places for the people for civilians and injured to be safe. But that also is becoming increasingly difficult and challenging. And that's one of the major difficulties because the local people see the humanitarian organisations as offering safety and hope, and those sort of securities that have been possible in the past are just becoming more and more difficult to guarantee.
How hard is it to simply drive on the roads to get to an emergency safe spot, to help stock up the ambulances, for example? It must be tough because I've seen some of the images and some of the devastation that you've been working in. The roads look like they're almost impassable. It looks, you need to be in a bulldozer in some cases, don't you?
Well, yes, some of the areas that have had intense shelling, you definitely need a bulldozer before you can access those areas. And that's part of the activities ICRC have been involved in, is trying to organise a massive team response where it's the Palestinian Red Crescent ambulance along with the civil defence bulldozers and our vehicles all going into these areas to try and clear a path in to get the wounded out, but also clearing a sort of a safe passage for any civilians that wish to leave those areas to come out. But then in some areas of Gaza as well, you can travel short periods and things look relatively normal. So the border zone is the area that is wearing most of this conflict. Specific areas in the border that have been hotly contested. And we don't spend a lot of time in those areas. It's, they're very, very carefully negotiated windows of time that we spend in those areas trying to get people to safety.
Sadly, the death toll for Palestinians is well beyond 1,000 now. You've had first-hand experience of pulling people out of rubble. Yeah,
that was, for me, that's not been an everyday activity. I was just there that time. And if any of us are out in the cars with the PRCS, then everybody's hands-on, just doing what you can to either help people along the road sometimes, carry a newborn baby along the road, or in that case it was helping pull a woman out of the rubble. She'd been cooking her breakfast when the building had collapsed. So, yeah, it was. But I mean, this like yesterday, you would have seen on the news that they had a ceasefire and the families were going back in to find what they could, and that's belongings. It's also bodies. Very, very, very hard on people. Very hard.
And it must be hard on yourself, Gail. I mean, you're trying to do the very best you can on behalf of the Red Cross, and you're coming across scenes where, as you say, you're dealing with a woman who was simply cooking a breakfast. Next minute, her life changes forever. It must be hard to deal with those types of scenes.
Oh, it's extremely hard to deal with. I mean, I work with over 100 in ICRC in our local office in Gaza. There's 100 local staff members, and the stories of how they're surviving on a day-to-day basis, and yet they're coming to work and they're doing an amazing job for the rest of the population. And for me, that's one of the big reasons why I can do what I'm doing. I see what they're doing, and you just want to do your best to help them help themselves. Yeah.
It must be so hard for them to help themselves. I mean, you've got the ICRC, as you say. You guys do a wonderful job just trying to offer any support you can. But at the same time, it must be hard for locals in Gaza to help themselves when they're actually left with nothing.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And I mean, the psychological effects of a third war, as I heard on somebody talking about it the other day, a 7-year-old has, my numbers are a bit muddled, they've experienced 3 wars in 7 years and don't really know anything, and the psychological effects of it all are just, I don't think any of us really can relate to it and how it's going to be in the long run for those people, because again, the security is just totally unknown. And, I see today, the UN are calling for an immediate humanitarian ceasefire, and it's like the equivalent of Christmas today. And yet there's no room for celebration.
Gail, do you feel safe yourself when you're in Gaza? Because I do know that an emergency medical worker was killed and 3 others wounded. They were Red Crescent volunteers themselves. I mean...
That's right. Yeah.
That's shocking.
I mean,
they're just trying to help in a war zone.
I mean, that's one of the things that, the press statements from ICRC, they're condemning the fact that even the healthcare workers or the ambulances, they're going out under the protection of the emblem, and yet, they're still being either directly or indirectly targeted. And it's terrible. It's terrible. Personally, we take considered risks. We have to balance things all the time. And sometimes that's why now, ICRC are coming out and saying it is getting more and more and more difficult to do what is legally or lawfully meant to be able to be done in these sort of situations. And ICRC does remind all parties of their obligations to respect and protect the medical mission and the lives of civilians.
But it seems like nobody is off limits in terms of this war, and that seems the sad tragedy in all of this.
You're right. It is a terrible tragedy, because I think, it's that element of hope that helps people continue. Yeah, when some of those basic obligations or rights are not being respected, it is very, very, very difficult to do the job that everybody's meant to do. We are doing stuff though. Everybody is still doing stuff, and they're doing it to the best of their ICRC we've still got stuff coming into Gaza and being sent out to the hospitals and the ambulances. We still are in daily negotiation with all parties of the conflict, as are many of the other humanitarian organisations in Gaza. So, it's never defeat. There's always something to push ahead with, and that's why we're here.
Now, I know in a way the International Committee of the Red Cross, you won't get political because you're there just to help on a humanitarian level. But in your view, Gail, what will stop this conflict? What will stop the daily bombardment on both sides, to be fair? What will stop the killing and the shelling, do you think?
I really, I don't know. I can't, even as a personal opinion, it's very, very difficult to try and answer that type of question, because this is not a new fight. Yeah. And,
you're right, it's been going on for many years.
Gaza, that's it. And, there's people in Gaza that exactly like you and I, they just want to live every day with their family and have hope for their children and education and health. And so, but what will actually stop all of this is, I don't know. I haven't got a magic answer, unfortunately. I wish I had.
Perhaps finally, do you have any sort of message to the people of New Zealand? I mean, we are worlds away from this conflict, but there have been many rallies up and down the country, for better or worse, regarding the situation. It seems that the whole world eyes are following this conflict very closely on both sides.
I mean, my comment on this is it's really, really important to be aware of both sides of the story. I think I grew up with a very one-sided knowledge, and living in the area and living in the region, including in Iraq, I mean, you really have to go back into the history and just read the history and know, and having strong opinions about it is really, really, it's for the people here. I mean, we should just be really informed. I don't know that we've always got a right to have a strong opinion about one side or the other.
Nicely said. Well, Gail Corbett, really appreciate your time. Stay safe. Keep up the amazing work that you and your team do from the International Committee of the Red Cross. You've got one hell of a task, and please do stay safe.
Thank you.